Amelia's wealthy parents are shocked when they learn that the prospective husband of their daughter came from a background that was appalling for them. Learning about the truth of Brandon's background, the family did not want to do with anything about him. They tease and mock him till he believes he is actually inferior to the rest of the bride's family. What was surprising to everyone, though, was the fact that once the poor father came to the celebration, we brought with him a gift for the newlyweds. Everyone deserves to be respected. That is a very basic thing we are taught at a very young age. Amelia's family was dismayed that Braden's dad, Nikolai, would have still come up to their marriage after all the effort they tried and did in order to discourage him from attending. It was really surprising for them, because with the degree of mistreatment that they showed the old man, they thought it was enough to break any person. At that time, though, not only were they surprised, but they also ended up being totally outplayed. Amelia's relatives had tried to make certain that Nikolai will be the last one when the blessing and giving began. They intended his present to appear insignificant. When matched to the present the couple will get, which came from the arrogant family, since they made sure that nothing could outshine what they prepared. What happened next was way beyond the expectation of the people who attended, especially of those who went on the extra mile just to make Nikolai appear insignificant. When Amelia's relatives learned what Nikolai, who they saw as a lowly janitor, had given her and her husband, they realized they had been beaten. Nothing can even come close to it. There's no way to even say there's a competition. Makes us wonder what Nikolai could have prepared for the event that even the rich family and relatives admitted that they could not compete. And all of this despite being considered and marked as the old and lowly individual. When the sweet couple first saw each other, they knew they wanted and needed to be together for as long as their lives would allow it. There was never a couple so enamored with each other before, and they decided to use all of their time together. They spoke up about their deepest secrets and worries. They did a fantastic job, but bumps on the road were something no couple could ever avoid, even the most perfect ones. When the proposal was made to her, they had been together for about 1.5 years. This clearly was Amelia's most joyful moment in her life. With the biggest grin on her face, she answered the most beautiful yes. Nikolai and the rest of the family on Brandon's side were clearly happy for the couple who they have seen to be very happy with each other. The same story could not be said from the other side of the party. They had plenty of questions, and that sparked the problems. Brandon was appreciated by Amelia's family, since he clearly was a decent youngster who worked and showed promise to be a professional person. They were aware that he adored and cared deeply for their daughter. The man himself was good, but the family was thinking that maybe their daughter could marry into a more decent family. They were disturbed by the fact that Brandon came from a poor family without realizing that it was that background that formed his hardworking attitude. Amelia's family is an excellent demonstration of individuals who have created their own stories throughout their lives. During the time her ancestors came to the country, they were able to establish a business that allowed the family to flourish and at the same time secure the family for many generations to come. The entire family tried and was able to be involved in the business. Through this, we can see that the family itself is not just arrogant because they are raised that way, but rather that they themselves are aware of what it takes. As a result, the majority of the members of this clan would look for marriage partners who were as affluent as they were. These actions were taken in order to guarantee that no one in the household was a freeloader. With that in mind, many people would think that the argument and the reasoning of the family were good, and it made sense, but it also set them up to be seen as basically elitists. Because of this, it made the entire circumstance with the wedding plunge into chaos. Brandon's immediate family, as many of you may assume today, was far from wealthy. His mom had been incapable to earn a living for a long time because of some physical and health reasons, and his dad, Nikolai, had worked as a maintenance man for the majority of his life in the workforce and only earned what was seen as the basic pay. The situation clearly reflects the situation of many families in our society today. When placed side by side to the bride's family background, this clearly was an utterly ridiculous circumstance that made Braden absolutely incapable of marrying to the clan, since it would only blemish the reputation of everyone in the clan. They all had their idea as to what would be the conditions that the groom would have to accomplish in order to say that he is fit to be carrying their name and reputation. He clearly was a loving and hardworking man, but what can he show for it? Amelia was well acquainted with her relatives and their tendencies and had anticipated her parents to react in this manner. Amelia wasn't going to pay attention to her folks' objections because she had clearly and already chosen for herself, and that the decision to select Brandon was the correct action to take. She loved him, and he was sure to make his love clear and obvious, as to make sure his wife-to-be wouldn't have any doubts at all. She had intended to do her plan on a solo flight at the initial phase, because then she wouldn't have to rely on her folks' permission. They would indeed be welcome, but they wouldn't be involved in just about any other manner than that. But she was also clearly aware of the backlash that will transpire from this. Despite the fact that the family was against the thought of her marrying a man from a poor family, she was going to make a stand for herself. They were worried that they would lose their darling young child to a household that was absolutely unsuitable in their opinion. As a result, they devised a strategy to respin the issue to their benefit. They were scared that she would not be genuinely happy and fulfilled with her choice of a husband, and that when things will become dicey that she will regret the decision she made. They were truly convinced that they were doing these things for the sake of their daughter. The intention was to act as they've just put their misgivings aside and were now ready to give parental approval to the wedding. The family was going to prove it by covering the entire wedding cost, which was a pretty large amount, large enough to really convive the couple. This was eagerly embraced by the pair. They didn't realize, though, that the entirety of the thing was nothing more than a scheme, not merely a good faith recommendation. Amelia's family's genuine motives for financing for the nuptials were far less noble than the family was implying. Because they realized they couldn't stop the ceremony from unfolding, they decided to make the most of it. They were well aware that maybe if their child learned about it, then she would indeed be so disappointed and saddened about the entire thing that Amelia would hate the idea of even getting married and would just decide to run away. They demanded that the conference be held at their home, and they spared no cost in receiving Brandon's plight-ridden parents. When they took this action, there was no remorse or guilt at all whatsoever, because what they were doing was a means for an end. And that end is to force their daughter to not marry the man that came from a poor family. Amelia's folks were dolled up in some of the most costly clothes they owned, making a bad first impression on the family, which was their intention anyway. The groom's dad, on the other hand, arrived at their home straight from his shift, so he didn't have time to even wash his face or comb his hair. He was humiliated by this, yet he didn't think it would signify much with this encounter if he looked good in public. Amelia's parents, regrettably, made it clear that they truly were pretending to make fun of the poor man in private. They noticed after a while that it was getting to his consciousness. And Nikolai fabricated up some excuse like feeling a bit under the weather, just to save himself from any more humiliation. The couple had a difficult time seeing this, since they were hoping for a nice ending to their encounter, but it wasn't to be. Amelia's parents believed they had broken the spirit of the unfortunate gentleman. They had accomplished what they simply had set out to do. The ceremony would only be the perfect topping if all went well. The couple was quite disappointed, as they should be, particularly Amelia, who thought that her folks were capable of making things like these happen, but that they would not go to that extent. What took place next, though, was a great surprise to everyone. While the bride's family was preoccupied with organizing everything with the ceremony, Brandon's family extended their intention to help, except for a lowly man who could not be even seen in the venue. They hadn't heard from the man in a long time and were even unsure if he'd be able to make it to the ceremony. Nikolai, on the other hand, did not vanish, but he did make his only special arrangements for this important day. Nikolai was not expected to attend the wedding, according to both households. Amelia was dissatisfied, since she wanted her papa-in-law to be there for the occasion. Nikolai, on the other hand, astonished them by attending the celebration and putting in a lot of effort to appear great. He leased a fine suit and footwear, and he'd got his hair styled up for the occasion. As a result, he didn't appear to be out of touch with Amelia's family. By attempting to rearrange the seating plan, Amelia's relatives tried to disrupt the couple's wedding celebration. They did not wish for the groom's parents to be seated at the front row. Amelia, obviously aware, knew her folks well enough to know that they would make a plan like this. to rearrange the seating arrangements at the very last minute. As a result, both households would be capable and should be allowed of appreciating the marriage of their offspring. She returned with her folks after a few moments, and the family had a tremendous dispute about just how the parents treated the other household. With her folks' nasty and inappropriate behavior towards the groom's parents, the bride was fed up. They would have to stop right now, lest they were on the verge of spoiling her most precious day. And if that were to happen, she is not sure if she would be able to even look at her parents in the eye. Amelia's family pledged to keep outside from the couple's marriage henceforth after that chat. They do have something planned and hidden in their sleeves, and quitting from their plan was not in their minds at all. They seem to have a scheme to sabotage Nicolet's life. They decided to put it in action in a covert manner so that Amelia wouldn't be aware of their objectives. The most disgusting part about all of this was that it was clearly for their sake that they are doing this and not for their daughter. With only a few moments to go before the wedding, all of the attendees had come, and the ceremony was finally underway. Parents from both households and families were in the first row, although on different parts of the aisle. Both households didn't even gaze at the other side throughout the entire ceremony, and even if no words were spoken, the animosity was very tangible to everyone. Their egos were more important to them than their kids' well-being. Amelia was really apprehensive about this phase of the ceremony during the nuptials. She didn't have any apprehensions about making things formal with Brandon because she was confident and delighted about it. The bride was apprehensive that someone would protest the marriage. She thinks that she has seen enough movies to think that it's very possible to happen. She was truly afraid that their folks might stand up and ruin the day by doing anything during the wedding procedures itself. With their hate for the groom's family, she thought her parents might have impacted everyone else of the clan. She was worried that when any one of them did anything stupid, she would be the main person to blame, and she knows that her family is more than capable of doing so. She was saddened by the scenario since she intended her family to be with her and not averse to her during this very special time. Although the bride was correct in her assessment of her household's dislike towards the groom as a result of her folks' actions, fortunately, nobody went to such an extent that the marriage was jeopardized. She felt fortunate at the time, and she attempted to make the most of her marriage as the situation would allow. Despite his apprehension about all of this, Brandon did the best that he could possibly do, all for the sake of the happiness of her wife. After that, tea and other refreshments were served, and it definitely was clear that the households were very secluded, just conversing with one another within the family. It surely was a huge disappointment, but the newly married couple had come to anticipate it, considering that from the very beginning, things were clearly very shaky among them. The couple didn't have any other choice than to try to make the most of their big day for the sake of their life as married individuals. The newly wedded couple had come to terms with the reality that neither of their families liked the other side, and that things will just have to stay that way and not much could be done to salvage it. They were, however, content and comfortable because they thought the two sides were no longer working diligently against one another, as the union was already done and it would be too much hassle to try and break the marriage. Amelia's parents, on the other hand, had other ideas. Amelia's folks started pushing for the present phase of the program to begin. They really cannot wait much longer because they had great preparations for this aspect of the ceremony. For this part, they had indeed devised a scheme that appeared to be innocent. Moreover, it was yet an opportunity for them to show off their affluence and to break the spirit of the other household by showing off their capabilities, especially on financial matters. Last but not least, Amelia's folks had agreed to give the present to the newlywed couple before the other family could give theirs, because that is still part of the plan. At first look, this appeared to be of no importance at all, since gift-giving is not really about who goes first, but this was no doubt that this conduct was carried out with malicious purpose. This conduct was not viewed with suspicion by either the couple or anyone else in the venue. Amelia's folks had spent a lot of money on their gifts, and the two of them went above and beyond for what they have prepared. They intended to deliver their presents to the groom's family first, so that some sort of comparison could start, and thus would start the demoralizing plan of Brandon's household. This was really their original goal, and they hoped that the bride would be unaware of their genuine motives for giving the gifts. This idea was yet another method for the highbrow parents to try to embarrass the simple and humble Nikolai and showcase off the significant aspect of their clan and brag about the important aspect of their household. When Nikolai offers what he had prepared, however, they will be utterly blown away by what this lowly man was hiding in his sleeves, because Nikolai's present was capable of blowing out of the water everything that the other family has prepared. The majority of the newlywed couple's gifts were quite standard. The large part of the event, the bride's family bombarded everyone by showing off how expensive their gifts are. When compared to presents that were given with care and affection, there was nothing excessive or ridiculously expensive. But they were doing this not for the sake of giving gifts, but to just break down the spirit of the other family. Because of this, Amelia's family will be surprised by the groom's parents' gift. Fortunately, the gifts appear to have sparked more talk and laughter among the families. Many of the gifts from the household of the groom were witty and amusing, and surprisingly, many of the relatives of the other household enjoyed the creativity and amusement that it brought to the party. Then it was the bride's parents' turn, and everyone who attended the event knew that this was not going to be a normal gift by any means. Amelia's parents lavished extravagant gifts on the newlyweds like it was nobody's business at all. For their romantic getaway, the highbrow parents gifted them a lavish Maldives getaway for a 2-week vacation. The couple was obviously overjoyed to receive this present because they both needed some time to unwind after all the preparations and the stress and discover a new place. The two highbrow individuals were far from done into shoving their generosity to the other side of the family. Amelia's family didn't stop with this one, though. The bride was clearly concerned because it was becoming more clear that they were just doing this not for the sake of the couple, but for their own selfish gratification. It was clear that the family was enjoying the thought that in every gift they place at the table, the smaller the other family see themselves. Amelia's family even gave him a fancy motorcycle as sort of a thank you for letting them form the young guy for themselves. It was eventually the groom's family's turn when the other side was finished. On the groom's wedding day, his mother presented the couple with a number of lovely tea sets, which was something that she herself received during the time of her own marriage and has been on the service of the family for many years. This was a very treasured gift, although the fact was that the couple was not avid tea drinkers themselves. Then it came time for Nikolai's gift. Everyone in the venue was still trying to process everything that has transpired so far because of the fancy gifts the bride's family gave. So far, the plan of the highbrow couple was working since the crowd did not even notice the gift that the groom's mother gave. Then finally, it was the humble Nikolai's turn. At first glance, it seemed modest and simply insignificant. Yet it was bigger than anything Amelia's folks could ever give. The newlyweds ripped apart the wrapping of the gift to see what was contained in it. Amelia reached for a tiny plate with only a message on it. Everybody was not paying attention as they were still blazing about what a generous parent the bride had. Then to everybody's, the new bride started to have tears well up in her eyes. Everybody in the venue, especially her folks, was puzzled as to what Amelia witnessed that caused her to respond in this manner. Her parents rushed up to her and asked what had caused the bride to act the way she did. They realized the highbrow parents had been defeated when they witnessed what was the cause of her emotional state. Nikolai had beaten everyone, but he had zero ideas what the bride's folks had in mind. He surprised them with a present that showed the depth of the care and love that he had for his son and now for his daughter-in-law. What was written in that little plate was something so sincere and so precious that no amount of money could replace it. Sure, you could buy a plate with the same message, but the fact that the humble and lowly man made it from scratch was where the deep preciousness of it comes from. The message was a simple message that allows the couple to welcome anyone into their new life as a couple. It was so special because it legitimized, in the eyes of the groom's family, that their happiness was beyond any gifts that they could offer. Amelia's parents recognized that despite all the effort and how much they worked to keep Nikolai out of the family, she was always a part of the grooms, and Nikolai was able to do it just by simply saying in that plate message, "Welcome to the residence of Mr. and Mrs. Parker." The bride would have a metamorphosis by claiming a new name for herself, and that was something that the highbrow parents of the bride could never accomplish in that situation. They have to accept that their precious daughter is not anymore just their daughter. Amelia's folks had not noticed it before, but she would definitely no longer have the last name that she was baptized and named with, and no amount of money could ever change that back. For them to understand, this gift was solely focused on the message and the symbolism it entailed. Amelia's parents must accept the reality that Amelia selected this gentleman as her husband. They were so focused on imposing their importance that they lost sight of what was most important: